Luther Gulick and Robert Merton by Corinne Lindsay, MPA 510, California Baptist University. Quick overview here. My presentation is going to cover a brief summary of Luther Gulick's notes on the theory of organization and Robert Merton's bureaucratic structure and personality. Then I'll evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the theories, and finally relate them to modern public administration. Okay, to summarize notes on the theory of organization, Gulick talks about three key concepts: division of work, coordination of work, and organization patterns. With regards to division of work, this theory is based upon the nature, capacity, and skills necessary to complete the work. Not everyone can possess every skill for every job, and the ones who can possess many of those skills cannot be in more than one place at a time. Gulick uses the division of work to divide each task into components. So each worker will be sought out for the nature of the task, the capacity of that task will also be divided into smaller amounts, which are more manageable, and the skill can be honed on the smaller, more manageable scale of the task. So the coordination of work is the hierarchy where projects are given to the supervisors to delegate to appropriate workers according to this previous ideal of the nature, capacity, and skill. Organizational patterns talk mostly about chief executives and how sometimes they'll fall under the nature, capacity, and skill theory. Sometimes there should be more than one manager so that the chief can essentially be in two places at once. These chief executives must possess something Gulick called the Pas de Corps, which is the acronym, super long acronym for planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. Now I'll move on to Merton's bureaucratic structure and personality. Merton says the ideal formal organization in bureaucracy is where there's a clear division of duties that are interrelated and inherited by the whoever takes the office. So the holders of this office are highly trained and experienced, so there's no need for specific instructions in order for them to do their job. The job cannot be broken down into small tasks to be made more efficient, kind of like the scientific theory by Taylor. It's more of a thinking and outsourcing type of a position. So with regards to dysfunctions, I'll talk a little more about this on the next slide under the weaknesses, but it also covers how social structures depend on infusing attitudes and views, and many times they don't interconnect or agree within the group. The sources of overconformity. Effective bureaucracies must be reliable and abide by their regulations. That's basically what that means. Primary versus secondary relations. This talks about the stress in depersonalizing relationships. I know many people, including myself, who have worked within their organization for a long period of time and have built some friendships along the way. And as they move up in the hierarchy or chain of command, this can cause some strain on those relationships, finding themselves supervising their friends. It's a little bit difficult, so you're having to depersonalize that relationship. Problems for research. This is where Merton provides that personality is becoming a huge draw in public administration. Taking personality tests to gain employment or after you've had the employment, taking some sort of personality test to kind of see where you would fit within the organization. But basically, he asked, where do we draw the line and what exactly are we looking for? There are far too many personalities to try and obtain a few would hinder progress. And in the organization, some personalities meld well with others, and there are those that don't. And just because they don't get along well as much with others doesn't mean that they don't come with their special skills that are still needed for the organization. So now we evaluate these theories. Their strengths are the division of work, which is important to understand the nature of the work, the amount of time necessary to complete that work, and the proximity between the tasks to complete the work. This is how public administrators find the proper workers for the nature of the task, the proper amount of workers needed for that task, and the time it will take, as well as the space between the tasks. So the amount of workers is important for the amount of time, because if it's time consuming, then maybe they need a little bit more workers to lessen that time. They also need to consider the amount of workers with regards to the space between the tasks, because if there's a large amount of space between the tasks, you would need more workers on each side of that space. So people are naturally creatures of habit. The more you can turn the proper way of completing a task into a habit, the happier the worker will be. I was just talking to an officer in my training program who's struggling with report writing. And I tried to break it down into small pieces, and I told him to do it the same way every single time. And this way he would form a habit. And then the speed will naturally come along. So this goes the same for these theories. Smaller span of control makes things more manageable. This is usually why there's a hierarchy. So people are only reporting to one, they're only reporting to one person, and that person is only delegating to a few and not many. Now forgive me if I say this wrong, homogeneity is basically unity. So the principles of the organizations should be shared by all, and all should conform with unity. So on the weakness side, there is a tendency to have a lack of universal workers. If you create a division of work so strong that if some reason you need someone, let's just say from accounting, to help with someone in records, they'll be completely lost and unproductive. There's another issue with lessening the labor market opportunities, which follows when you're not developing more than one or two menial skills, especially when there is the introduction of machinery. Machinery is great because it can do what humans do faster and more efficient, and you still need laborers to work the machine, but you need far fewer laborers than needed to do the entire job prior to the machine's existence. Trained incapacity is when someone's abilities are no longer working with the changing environment around them. So you could be trained in certain ways. It's kind of like the old school, we call them salty people. They were trained a certain way, and this was the way that things were done, and they do not deviate from that training, which causes them to basically miss out on evolving, on the way that the organization is evolving. And lastly, there's an issue with administration that's gone from personal relationships with workers to categorical relationships. Have you ever heard someone refer to another worker as Diane from HR? Diane is categorically defined as HR. There are a lot of ways I have seen managers try to combat this issue with what they call an open door policy. But mostly I see that backfiring, and in my paramilitary organization, there's a huge break in chain of command with this open door policy. So modern examples of these theories are technically not so modern but still in existence, such as rank. Rank, chain of command, and hierarchy are all what you see here in my illustrations. I've put these according to my department, but there's the corporal with the 2 stripes, the sergeant with the 3. The single bar is a lieutenant, double bars are captains, 2 stars is the deputy chief, and 4 stars is the chief. The chain of command is essential to make sure span of control is minimal. It's difficult to have too many orders coming from too many people. This causes confusion. Each rank has their own duties and assignments that they do on their own, or they can delegate below. And last year I put the super long acronym of GULIC's POS de Corb, which is planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, budgeting, which are all essential functions of a public administrator. These are all issues that I've actually had to talk about recently when I was putting in for a promotion, because a lot of these are just daily things that we have to do. Staffing is a huge issue with my department and probably many other departments because hiring is more and more difficult. Directing people is more and more difficult, especially if you're not adhering to those chain of commands. Coordinating efforts with others, making sure you're preparing your reports and that they're on time, and sticking to your budget. So these are all essential functions for anyone in public administration. We've come to the end of my presentation. Here are my references. Thank you for watching and farewell.